Alleluia, alleluia.
Alleluia, alleluia.
One does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes forth from the mouth of God.
Alleluia, alleluia. The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus heard of the death of John the Baptist, he withdrew in a boat to a deserted place by himself. The crowds heard of this and followed him on foot from their own towns. When he disembarked and saw the vast crowd, his heart was moved with pity for them, and he cured the sick. When it was evening, the disciples approached him and said, "This is a deserted place, and it's already late. Dismiss the crowd so that they can go to the villages to buy food for themselves." Jesus said to them, "There's no need for them to go away. Give them some food yourselves." But they said to him, 5 loaves and 2 fish are all we have." Then he said, "Bring them here to me." And he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish and looking up to the heaven, he said the blessing, broke the loaves, and gave them to the disciples, who in turn gave them to the crowds. They all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up the fragments left over, 12 wicker baskets full. Those who ate were about 5,000 men, not counting the women and the children. The gospel, the good news of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
So let me ask you, if you had a choice and you were to eat bread, what would you rather have? Would you rather have this? Kroger bread, white enriched bread, no high fructose corn syrup in it? Or would you rather have this loaf of bread? How many would like to have this? No takers? How many would like to have this? I made this. It's my first foray into making bread. And I haven't tasted it yet, of course, but it looks like it turned out pretty good. To get this takes effort. It takes time. It takes time to shop for the ingredients. It takes time to measure out the flour in the mixing bowl, to add the water. It takes time to stir it up to get the sticky mess that it is. And prior to that, it takes time even to put the hot water in, to put in the yeast, the sugar, to bring it to its activation. It takes time to add the yeast, to bring about the leaven, to make it rise. It takes time to let the bread rise, to knead it, to proof it, and then let it rise again. It takes time to bring about the texture in the kneading process so that the bread tastes good. And once the dough has risen and it's been kneaded, and then you put it in the pan, it takes time for it to rise again. It takes time to preheat the oven, to put the bread in the oven, to let it bake for its 45 minutes. But once it comes out, to cut a hot piece of bread, and oh, how I wanted to do that as the bread was done. And then, of course, to put the butter on it, maybe even some strawberry jelly. Good stuff. But this bread provides us with a nourishment and a sustenance that fills us up and lasts for a while, unlike this loaf of bread. This process takes time, which explains why so many people may just find it just as simple to pick up one of these as opposed to making one of these. In considering this process of bread making, I think it gives us some insight into the disciples in this particular gospel, with the feeding of the 5,000 and why they found it so challenging. While Jesus had gone off to a deserted place to pray and to grieve the loss of his friend and his cousin John the Baptist, the people kept coming. And when he disembarked from the boat, there they all were, looking at him. And his heart was moved with pity for them. On that hillside, he cured the sick. He cast out demons. He forgave sins. And with evening drawing near, the disciples approached Jesus and they said, "Send the crowd away. It's dark, it's getting late, and they're hungry." With this, Jesus says, "Give them something to eat yourselves." And the disciples looked at him and said, "What? Where are we going to get food? It's late, we're at a distant place. Where are we going to get enough to eat to feed this crowd?" And Jesus says, "Give me what you have." And they said, 5 loaves and 2 fish are all we got. Give it to me. And he takes the loaves and he takes the fish, he lifted them up to the heavens, he blessed them, he broke them, and in turn he gave them to the disciples, who in turn gave them to the crowd. And everyone ate. And they were satisfied. They were filled. They all ate. There was plenty. There were even leftovers. 12 baskets left over. If you think about Jesus, Jesus never meets a need that he cannot satisfy. He healed the blind man named Bartimaeus. He gave speech and hearing to the deaf-mute man. He forgave the sins of the woman at the well and the woman caught in the sin of adultery. He raised the dead man Lazarus and restored the hope of his sister, Martha and Mary. Though Jesus is a miracle worker, he expects something from us too. He has the expectation that we will open our hearts and our lives to his grace to allow the miracle to activate so that the miracle of God can happen. If you think about it, Jesus didn't come to found schools. He didn't come to found daycares or St. Vincent de Paul societies or hospitals or youth groups or dioceses. He came to bring life to the fallen. He came to ignite the faith of those whose lives had become lukewarm and weighed down by the troubles of life. He even says in Luke's Gospel, chapter 12, verses 49, "I have come to light a fire on the earth, and oh, how I wish it were already blazing." Jesus came to open us up to his grace and his inspiration, to his charity and his love. It's when we open ourselves up to his power that the miracle of life can happen so that we can continue to multiply and bring about the abundance of God's grace to our world. The encouragement for us is to continue to bring about this great abundance of Jesus in our world. This week, what I want to encourage us to do is to help someone experience the miracle of Christ, the miracle of Jesus, to move them from this to this, to allow this to happen in another's life. How do we do this? To make this happen, I'd encourage you to spend some time in the backyard if you have a child or a grandchild or maybe a neighbor, just playing catch. Take some time on this beautiful Sunday. Maybe even in the evening, if you got a little child or a little grandson or a daughter, to play Candyland. That 45th time that they ask you to play it together. There's a head shaking that would like to play Candyland, of course. Maybe even to have a movie night just to take time to pop some popcorn, enjoy a movie together as a family. Take time. Make an entire meal for a neighbor or for a friend or even a stranger, and encourage them with the time that it takes to engage another. If you're financially able to do so, send some extra money to an organization that has the mission of helping others who are less fortunate than you. Take time to tutor a child with math or science, reading or writing, especially in this season. Or even take time to offer some babysitting services to a mom or a dad so that they can run some errands, or just take a break for a moment while they're working from home. To bring about the miracle of Jesus takes work and it takes effort, but it sure tastes good and it fills us up. And with Christ, there are always leftovers. So if you stick around after Mass, we can taste this together.